Good evening, everyone. I'm really sorry for this delay. There was a technical hitch, and we have just partly solved it. Our next speaker, before we announce, I need to tell you that his camera is not working. He's all the way from US, and the last 10 minutes we're trying to sort it out. But unfortunately, we couldn't fix it, but we will be able to go through the presentation. So let me, without delaying much, give you a quick background about Dr. Box, as is commonly called in industry. Dr. Randy Ferris is a world-renowned packaging consultant. He has been in the consulting space for the packaging industry for now well over a decade. He is part of, he's the president and CEO and a packaging consultant, trainer, a speaker, and he is also an expert witness. He runs Dr. Box Consulting. He has been in the packaging supply chain business for several decades. He has been one of the few consultants in the packaging industry that was a member of the TAPI, which is the Technical Association of the Pulp and Paper Industry. He runs his own paperboard packaging group, which is one of the most active LinkedIn group with over 30,000 members worldwide. And he has been working in the packaging industry and consulting packaging companies globally. So without much of a delay, I would like to call on Randy to take over, and he will not be seen, unfortunately, but you can listen to him while we share the slides. Randy, over to you.
Okay. Thank you for having me this morning. We're having a couple technical difficulties, but we're going to work through those. So if we could start the presentation slides, then I'll start talking. Start on slide 3. Okay, basically, in order to achieve any success with any organization, everyone needs to work towards the same goals. There are a couple of ways to do that. Next slide. The next slide. You can either build it through a greenfield process where you're actually building all of the processes from the ground up in a brand new organization or a brand new plant, or
Actually, can you change the slide?
we need the next slide. Or you can change the culture of the existing operation. And in most cases, we end up having to change the culture. And changing the culture is a much more challenging endeavor than just starting it as a greenfield operation.
But the slide is not transiting.
You need to get on slide 5 now. If you can get to slide 5. All right. Basically, you need to have the best people. The thing that really separates a world-class company from an average company is basically the level of the people that are working within the organization. You've got, in any organization, you've got your get-by employee who comes in, does their job, and goes home. Those are not conducive to excelling, but you need some of those in any company, because you can't have everybody with opportunity to be promoted because there are less successive positions. But you do need somebody that comes in and is at least a good employee, and they will work hard and they'll do whatever it takes to get the job done with enthusiasm. The difference between a good employee and a great employee is the great employee can actually see solutions that others don't see, and they continually create new ways to improve the company, which basically allows them to pay for themselves over and over and over by having them in the company. Those type of employees require a challenging environment, and they require recognition and the ability to grow within the organization. Next slide. Now, breakthrough performance can happen one of two ways. What happens in some cases is you have a new technology, or you have some new ideas that have never been utilized before that create the breakthrough. But the vast majority of the time, that isn't the case. Basically, in most cases, what causes the breakthrough performance is all departments working continuously improving at the same time. Next slide. Basically, everyone must be heading in the same direction. Once you get everybody starting to head in that direction, and you've got a buy-in from a portion of the employees, you start to see some progress towards the goals of the organization. As more and more people are accountable for the progress and for the improvement, you eventually get where everybody is working towards the same goals and everybody is achieving incremental improvement, and as a whole, that creates a breakthrough improvement for the entire organization. Next slide. Now, with people, you do need to set challenging goals, but if you set a goal that's too far and you're not able to instruct and help the employees be able to achieve the goal, they're not going to be able to achieve it. Now, some of you may have seen at some of the different marine parks in the world where you have a killer whale that jumps over a bar outside of the water. Well, the way they teach the killer whale to do that is if they set the bar outside of the water, the whale is not going to be able to jump over it. So what they do is they put it at the bottom of the pool. And when the whale swims across it, they reward him. And when he doesn't, then they don't. And they reward him by feeding him. Then after a period of time, they continue to incrementally raise the bar. And eventually it gets to the top of the surface of the water. At that point, the killer whale becomes a little confused, but it continues to swim underneath it and it's not getting its result. But it knew that if it was able to go over it, that it got the reward. So it learns to jump over the bar. And then as the bar is raised out of the water, it continues to be able to jump out of the water and over the bar. And basically all departments and all employees have to be able to grow in a fashion that they can achieve the lofty, exciting goal, but it needs to be broken down into bite-sized pieces that they can digest and that they can have smaller successes along the way. Next slide. So basically, the key is to make steps forward every day. In order to do so, at the small and operational level, there need to be plans in order to be able to achieve those goals all the way up through the top of the organization. Next slide. So what are some keys to profitability in a company? Basically, and this is something that is less common in emerging economies, is a true safety culture. We don't want anybody to be injured or hurt in order to make or distribute the product. If we do that, then nobody wins. We all win when we can work safely. Then having an agile and lean culture and a do what it takes mentality is important. You need to be able to meet, or in some cases exceed, customer quality expectations. And you need to prioritize velocity over backlog. A lot of times in the past, companies had built a backlog of information, a backlog of orders, and a backlog of inventory to make sure that they could continuously run and things along that lines. That creates a lot of waste that needs to be eliminated, and you need to be able to get orders that you can turn quickly, and you need to be able to adjust quickly. Each machine, if you're running machinery, has a maximum OEM productivity. You need to make sure that you're able to run as close to that maximum productivity with as little downtime as possible with the quick order turns. Get paid for what you do. What I mean by that is, in some cases, there are items that are not going to run efficiently in your plant, or that are going to have, due to the design, that are going to create intrinsic waste within the process. In cases that that happens, it's okay as long as the customer is paying for it. So as long as you're able to maintain a profitability in the items, it makes sense to run the items. And you don't want to get blinded just by productivity numbers and throughput numbers when those don't necessarily represent the profitability or the contribution for the company. Data management. In this day and age, there's a lot of data, and there are a lot of different ways to manage that data, and most companies do a very poor job of having consistent data and utilizing that intel to help them manage their operations for improvement. You need to be able to procure your materials efficiently and effectively. You need to eliminate waste and sell service in order to sell products, because in some cases where the products are not well differentiated, the difference is actually in the level of service and meeting the on-time delivery and being available and being able to adjust your processes to meet customer demands. Next slide. So leading improvement, you've got to set your exciting goals, and there needs to be an urgency from the top down in order to achieve those goals. You need to determine what skills you need within the organization. If there are any other associations or organizations or other companies within, whether it's a supply chain or operationally or industry-wide, that can help you achieve your goals. There must be accountability from the top down in the organization, or you cannot achieve your goals. And there needs to be something in it for all levels of the organization. There needs to be a motivation for even the line employees to come to work and be happy and productive in their jobs. Next slide. The main things that need to be prioritized are safety, quality, productivity, and waste. Safety needs to be number one. Quality is typically number two, but based on your organization, whatever your priorities are, they need to be communicated throughout the entire organization. They need to understand your vision and your mission and the way they fit into that process. Next slide. You need to have some way, once you measure it, in order to translate that to each and every person within the organization, because they need to understand how they're doing. And you have to have some kind of a scorecard to measure that performance, because you can't improve something you can't measure. And there needs to be some type of financial measure. It needs to include process improvement, learning and growth for each individual person, and has to be focused on your customer, because the highest need is to satisfy that customer. That's going to help create the success. Next slide. When you're creating your measurements and you're communicating those to the people, you need to make sure that they are completely in line with the company's mission, values, vision, their corporate strategy, and then the map on how the organization is actually going to achieve that strategy. At that point, you build your scorecards for each department and each individual person in the department that helps them be able to make the steps needed in order to achieve the ultimate corporate strategy according to the strategy map. And it needs to be cascaded through the entire organization and part of the strategic management system. Next slide. When you're managing and measuring performance, you need to set the direction and the goals. You need to provide development opportunities for your people. You need to offer regular feedback, note the accomplishments, and deliver annual performance reviews. I've been in companies where employees have worked for the company for 30 years and they've never been reviewed, and they don't know. They think they're doing a good job, but they don't know. And I can give you a little example. If you ask most people what they want in a boss, they'll say, well, I just want a boss that just leaves me alone and lets me do my job, gives me the tools. That is not what people want. That is what people will tell you they want, but it is not what people want. People in that environment are not going to be happy in their job. In order for a person to be happy in their job, they need to know the difference between good performance and bad performance. They need you as a boss to be able to recognize when they're doing a good job and when they're not doing a good job, and point it out when there are areas for them to improve in a positive and constructive manner, and recognize and notice when they are doing a good job so they can feel good and feel positive and emotionally attached within their job. And every employee needs to have that in order to feel fulfilled within their job. Next slide. One way that a lot of companies are using now to take these metrics and vital factors that they have determined are needed, and the performance gap analysis that they've done of the current state of the company and where they need to be, and that as it cascades down through the department, a lot of times they'll create a SMART objectives scorecard basically for each employee and what the expectations are. And each employee will have specific goals that are able to measure real world problems that the company is having, and will help them achieve that. If they hit those goals, it will help the organization close the gap between the current performance and the desired performance at the end of the strategic map. It needs to be measurable, because again, if you can't measure something, you can't improve it. And if you do accidentally improve it, you don't know you've improved it, because you're not measuring it. It has to be measurable. People have to be able to see their performance and understand how they're doing and what needs to be done. It has to be an achievable goal. Back to the killer whale example, if you put the bar too high to where they don't believe that they can achieve it, or they don't understand how to achieve it, then they're not going to achieve it. It needs to be relevant. It needs to be something that they can actually do within their span of control that will help the organization achieve its goals. And every goal has to have a time constraint and a deadline to when it has to be done. Next slide. Execution is the key. One good idea implemented is better than 1,000 good ideas. In any organization, every person in the organization has some good ideas. But a lot of times that doesn't get utilized because people are not asking the employees what the ideas are. And then once you have the ideas, they're not executed. If there are good ideas, you need to not only find them, but you need to make sure that you get them implemented, and they need to be part of the objectives that get set. Next slide. Agile, Lean, and Six Sigma are basically terms for different processes or different ideas or concepts that are used to help build a world-class organization. And basically, each time you make different improvements and you add better processes, you're improving the organization as you build for the future. Next slide. So what separates a good leader from a great one? Great leaders are fearless, that they're willing to take on strong challenges. They're leading the charge and not ordering it. They're not standing on the sidelines and telling people to charge at war and charge to the front lines. They're actually standing on the front lines, leading the charge. They're fighting with the troops. They're actually walking among all levels of the organization and trying to understand the organization, not only from their level, but everybody beneath their level in the hierarchy, so everybody knows where they're going and they're able to communicate that. They're trying to eliminate causes and not just trying to put a Band-Aid on a broken arm. They need to find out what the real cause is instead of trying to figure out a workaround to what the current situation is. You need to be able to change quickly. You need to celebrate your victories with everybody. You need to, we talked about recognizing performance. Action steps need to be small enough that people can make each different step and feel good about it as we're trying to achieve the organizational goals. And the organizational goals should be planned in advance. A good leader needs to be confident, but be able to listen to everybody else's ideas and not think they know it all, because none of us can accomplish anything without the entire team or organization. If your employees don't want you to succeed, you're not going to succeed. If they want you to succeed, there's almost nothing that you can't accomplish. You need to be firm, friendly, and fair. There needs to be a personal investment for every different person in the organization. They need to take their job personally and serious and feel good about their job and feel always that they're trying to do what's best for the organization and not have to be told what to do. They need to know and be able to seize those opportunities, and they need to be able to share ideas amongst everybody to try to make the company better. A good manager has to be able to be uncomfortable and be comfortable being uncomfortable, because everything you want to achieve is on the other side of being uncomfortable. And if you're not willing to shake up the culture, if you're not willing to explore things that are stretching your abilities and learning and growing, you're not going to achieve your goals. Next slide. The Pareto principle, which has been applied to a lot of things since Joseph Duran originally did so. He's the one who originally called it the Pareto principle, because Pareto basically only used it for an economic analysis. And it's Joseph Duran that used it to actually apply to many different other things. And essentially 20% of your effort is going to result in 80% of your results. 20% of your customers generally are going to represent 80% of your profit, and things like that. You need to make sure that you focus on the most important 20% in order to be productive. Because if you're spending most of your time, as most companies do, on less important daily routine things instead of making the company better, then you're not going to outpace your competitors. Next slide. When you're running a department or a company, you need to treat it like it's your money. If you wouldn't write a check, if you owned the company and you wouldn't do that, you shouldn't do it. Everything needs to be measured in a return on investment format. Is this the best thing for the company? Is this what I would invest my own money in if this was my company to get there? If not, then it's a bad decision and you should not be spending the money. And most people do not think this way, and they end up wasting a lot of money on a lot of things that do not translate into success for the company. Next slide. Companies obviously need to grow profitable sales. They need to be able to penetrate into different markets. They need to get new customers and continue to grow. Next slide. All departments need to be led to excellence, and it needs to be led from the top down, because if sales is doing great and nobody else is, you're not going to be successful. Same thing for production, for customer service, for logistics, to scheduling, which is one of the most unheralded, most important jobs in any manufacturing operation, is the planner operation. Everybody needs to be working in unison and growing together so your entire organization is improving. That's how you get breakthrough performance. Next slide. So what is Agile manufacturing? It originated, Agile, in the world of software development. The Agile Manifesto outlined values and principles to create and develop software. It was very important to really understand your customers' needs and to be able to change quickly on the fly in order to be able to meet those needs, because what is needed this year or this month may be different than what's needed next month or next year. So you need to be able to adapt quickly and create new releases and new things to continually move forward, instead of waiting until everything is developed and then roll it all as a complete new model. You just continually keep improving as you go forward in your products. And you have to not only understand your customers, you need to understand what your competitors are doing, the direction that they're headed, and you really need to understand your market. Next slide. Agile is used extensively in procurement and in the supply chain. And you need to make sure that you're using a proven and structured process, that you're finding more competitors in all of the different supply chain areas. You need to know what your costs are. You need to be doing should cost modeling. You need to know what it costs your manufacturers and your suppliers to make their products, to know if you're paying a competitive price. You need to understand the markets and the indexes. You need to understand all of your available negotiation levers within the company and externally in order to be able to negotiate to make sure that you're paying the right price for all of your materials. You need to have exceptionally written contracts that protect your organization and give you flexibility for all key materials. You need to make sure that you're providing high levels of service and flexibility throughout the entire organization, from the top to the bottom. And you need to make sure that you're managing your supply chain in a disciplined and data-driven format. Next slide. Agile manufacturing also uses the SCORE, which is basically 5 processes, and SCORE is basically used for Agile supply chain. And basically, you're planning, you're sourcing, you're making, you're delivering, and then you're handling any returns and then making adjustments to all of the information that you've been able to gather and re-releasing something new and better on a frequent basis. Next slide. Basically, the 12 Agile principles that underlie the idea behind Agile in software development and in manufacturing is early and continuous delivery. You're always making changes to the product and releasing new versions and new models. You're embracing change, and everyone in the organization has the ability to suggest change and to help implement change. You've got frequent delivery of different models and different products to your customers. You've got the business and sales end and the developers and everybody working together. So you're making sure that you're meeting your customers' ever-changing needs and that you're meeting the market demands and anticipating what those are before they happen. You need to make sure you have a motivated workforce and people are talking amongst each other, and you have departments talking to each other and working together face to face, and not have a siloed organization where each department acts independently. You need to have actual working software or products. The difference in Agile compared to a lot of other different things is, instead of waiting and trying to perfect everything through the design stage, you come up with a new idea, you create the product in a prototype, and you test it out, and then you decide whether to move forward or make changes. But you're constantly making new prototypes and new versions and testing that, and then figuring out your direction from there in order to release to the market. You need to have technical excellence. You need to not overcomplicate things. It needs to be simple. If you have 6 things that are really important to your market, you don't want to be focusing on 50. You want to concentrate on those 6. You need to have teams that are self-directed, that can make decisions and move forward on their own, and implement change if you want it to be done in a rapid and agile manner. You need to have regular reflection on what you've done, why you've done it, where the market's going, and make adjustments all the time. And all of these things are important. Next slide. Now, the 4 fundamental values of Agile are rapid iteration, which is basically delivering smaller pieces of value and releasing it to the market more frequently. New versions, replacing older versions, very similar to the first one. Collecting data and analyzing it each time something's released, and even in the prototype stage, and continuously improving all the time. You need to make sure that you're in tune with what your customers need and what they may need in the future, so you're making sure that you're ahead of that curve and delivering and exceeding what the customers want. You need to build flexibility into the process. You don't want to put so much rigidity into your manufacturing process or distribution model to make it difficult to change or too cumbersome to make changes on the fly. You need to be able to document them. You need to have a process that's manageable, but you need something that can adapt quickly as changes are needed. And everybody from every level of the organization needs to be able to make decisions and make changes and provide ideas to improve the entire organization, from what they can control to areas that are even beyond that, by utilizing their talents and knowledge. And 4th is augmented workers. It's when there's the ability to use technology to improve workers' performance, then use the technology to enhance people but not to replace them. Next slide. So when would agile manufacturing be most effective? In technology industries, medical and other industries where you must be first to market with new innovations to gain the most market share, this type of processing is critically important. If your competitors are constantly innovating, if your industry has new models coming out within a short period of time, and some examples of companies that this works very well in is cell phones. There are new cell phones, new tablets, new software, new gaming systems, new televisions, new automobiles with new technology constantly coming out and constantly staying on the cutting edge. In order to do so, you have to be agile. You need to make sure that you can change and anticipate and adapt quickly and come out with new models and new technology and get it out to market quickly. If your industry has customers that's needs are changing all the time, like applications for phones or games or television shows or movies where people's desires and things change frequently, you need to be able to adapt to meet those needs. Next slide. Now we're just doing a real high level process here, so we're not going to get into the details of all the different types of tools, but there are things that are used in Lean to improve companies and make them world-class. There are tools used in Six Sigma, and there are processes and ideas in Agile, and all of them can help your organization become a world-class organization. And a lot of the different tools and processes that are used amongst all three are overlapping, where a lot of them have the same type of ideas, they just do them in a slightly different way or are more focused into specific departments or areas more than other areas, but they're all trying to help you create a world-class organization. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, Six Sigma uses the DMAIC steps: define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. And everybody helps each other. Next slide. The main focus of lean manufacturing is eliminating all forms of waste, and waste can be in the forms of defective product or materials. It can be producing more than is needed at any stage of the process, waiting for materials or for processes or for machinery in order to be able to perform a particular task, not utilizing the knowledge, skills, and abilities of your teams, waste from moving products from one area to another and doing so in a less than efficient manner. Things should be located very close to where they're going to be utilized, so you're not spending a lot of time transporting things around an operation or from different locations. Inventory. All inventory is essentially waste, but there needs to be some bit of buffer in order to keep production lines running optimally. So there are specific mathematical calculations that can be used to make sure that you're minimizing the inventory to eliminate as much waste as possible and keep things rapidly changing. Smaller orders and quicker turnarounds. Wasted motion. Very similar to transportation, but motion is for people and individuals. If people have to walk too far to get to their tools and things like that, then that's important. Any extra processing and rework is waste. So next slide. Six Sigma and Lean use a lot of tools, and we don't have time to go into any detail on these, but some of them for Lean are value stream mapping, which is actually also used in Six Sigma, 5S, 8 wastes, single minute exchange of dies to reduce setup times, total productive maintenance, cellular flow, building error proofing within your process. Six Sigma is, in most cases, a statistical analysis method to try to get to root causes, analyze variances, make sure that things are repeatable and consistent, that processes are consistent, that we're utilizing people's abilities, and basically using a lot of different statistical tools in order to determine and create solutions for problems. Next slide. The main objectives of Lean are the highest satisfaction of customer needs through eliminating waste in all areas of the process while respecting human dignity. Next slide. You as a leader need to be fuel for the engine and not the exhaust. Agile, Lean, and Six Sigma are not mutually exclusive concepts. A lot of companies can utilize all three of those in order to maximize and help become a world-class organization. You need to determine which of these can benefit your company, which ones are the most important to do first, and implement any or all of them in a manner to improve your culture and your profitability, safety, cost, ability to react to needs in the market. And we individually, as leaders, need to add value to the organization. We need to avoid getting things too complicated. Like an example, Johnson & Johnson at one time in the past, when I was on a supplier for them, had me do a 128-page questionnaire and 43 spreadsheets in order for them to analyze my company's suitability in order to be able to supply them. No human being in this world is going to adequately analyze 128 narrative, detailed questions and 43 spreadsheets effectively to make a decision. That is way convoluted and needs to be focused on much fewer things that help the company achieve the goals and not try to show people how smart you are. People want a strong leader. They want somebody that's going to lead them into the future, that's going to make the hard decisions, and is going to lead the company, everybody from top to bottom, in the direction that the company needs to go. Next slide. The bottom line is the language of business is money. And in most cases, you have to remain profitable or you're not a viable entity. So a lot of the Agile and Lean and Six Sigma concepts are geared toward improving the profitability of an organization. And you as a leader need to not lose sight of the importance of helping the company make money. Again, you need to treat it as if it was your own money and you're making your own investments. Next slide. When you're setting goals, you need to set them together. You need to set them with your people, not set them for your people, because they need to understand them, they need to buy in, they need to believe that they're achievable, and they need to know how they can achieve those results in order for them to be able to achieve those results. And in doing so, you end up involving the entire organization and you get everybody moving in the same direction towards the same goals to meet the company's strategies. Next slide. So basically, let's improve the profitability of all of our organizations together by implementing the world-class techniques and helping improve your organization in all levels, using as many different tools as you can effectively manage as you move forward. Now we'll start the Q&A session and see if we can't answer some of your questions.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions. One thing which I would like to ask, based on my limited experience as a green belt in Six Sigma, one of the challenges that what we keep facing is when you try to do a process improvement exercise, especially with small companies, is that their lack of data. Most of the SOPs are not documented, and they essentially do based on individual skills and experiences. And I'm talking specifically for a print and packaging industry, more to a print industry rather than a packaging industry. What's your practical experience in trying to move an organization which is not having really documented process to a world-class facility? Do you have a practical experience to that? And if yes, what were the broad steps that you did? Obviously, it's not an overnight journey where you could actually take it from stage 0 to stage 10, in the entire transformation process.
Correct. What one thing that I've heard that kind of referred to as is tribal knowledge. Basically, this guy's in the position where he's at because of his 30 years of experience, 15 years of experience running the department. He knows how, and the minute he's not there, the company suffers because the next guy who's filling in doesn't have that knowledge and skills and everything else. So the very first thing that you need to do is you need to be able to sit down with the different departments, and you need to document what they are doing and document how these processes are being done now. Now, in most cases, if you're doing it and have been doing it a certain way for 30 years, chances are you're doing it wrong, because this world is ever evolving and there's always a better way to do something. So if you're doing it the same way that you did 5 years ago, there's probably a better way. But before you can get to the better way, you need to know what you're doing now. You need to set a benchmark. So the first thing is you need to figure out what people are doing, and you need to document it so you can figure out how you can make improvements to the process. And the first thing is to basically create your best known methods. If, let's say, you're looking at the planning function, you don't just take one planner. Take all your planners. If you have 5 different plants, take people at different levels within that part of the organization at a bunch of different locations and have everybody sit in the same room. And how are you doing it? How are you doing it different? Is there some way that Bill's doing it different than George that helps make this better? And as a team, figure out with what you're doing now, what the right way to do it now, so at least you're doing it consistently. You're mentioning data. Data is no good if it's bad. If you have 10 different customer service reps all calling a 10 by 10 by 10 box something different, then your data isn't any good. You need to have a standardization within your process on how people across the country, across multiple countries, different locations, where everyone's putting the data in a manner that you can actually do some type of amalgamation of the data and make some intelligent decisions based on that information. So you need first to figure out what the processes are. 2, you need to figure out a way to standardize the data inputs, and then you can start figuring out how to get to the data. You can use, Alteryx to kind of pull information out of a bunch of different systems on a temporary basis, and use Tableau for dashboards, and you can pull a lot of the stuff into Excel and do a variety of different analyses. The ultimate goal is to have that kind of stuff built into your enterprise system. But in a small company, you may not have the ability to do that at the moment. So you need to try to make the best of the data and the information you do have. And by pulling the data, looking at it, figuring out the deficiencies in the data, you can standardize some of the processes going forward to try to help make adjustments. And again, you have to make a few steps at a time. It's a long, multi-year process in a lot of cases to get from a tribal knowledge culture to a world-class culture. And you can't get there overnight, but you have to start from the basics. And the basics is figuring out where you actually are now, understanding your processes the way they are now, and then setting your goals incrementally as you move into the future.
Awesome. Based on your experience in trying to transform companies from, as you say, the tribal culture to a world-class culture, it's a great, statement. What is the average kind of a time span, and what's typically the kind of, let's say, how can I say, how do you put a project cost into that, and what are the kind of financial results can you that if you would like to give a template, and what has been the kind of a template? Say this is if it's a company, let's say it's $1 million company, and they were, let's say, making a financial performance of, let's say, $100,000. I'm assuming 10% profit. And what is the kind of expenses that goes into establishing that new process, and what's the kind of timeline that is required? Just as a ballpark, I know it's not every case is unique, but if a company asks you today, Randy, if I want you to help my company become a global company, what will you say? What is the cost involved into that, and how much of time it will take?
I wish I could give an answer to that. But
I know it's a tough one.
Right, but the reality is you have to do the assessment first. You have to assess where you're at and where you want to go and how you're going to get there before you can even determine the resources. And every type of product or service or anything has its own levels of profitability and different things. And I don't like to look at it as an expense. Now, initially, it will hit the P&L as an expense, but you don't want expenses. You want investments. You want whatever you're investing in to deliver results that exceed what the cost is. So it becomes an investment where there really is no cost in the end. It actually saves much more than what the cost is. There's kind of a joke that I heard one time that kind of summarizes it on a training side. CEO is approached by the CFO, and he comes up to the
About
CEO.
the training, yes, I know. What will happen if they don't get trained, right?
Right, exactly. And well, and the joke is if we spend all this money and train all of our people and they leave, then what's going to happen? Well, what if we don't train them and they stay?
Exactly. Yes,
right.
I heard that.
Make sure that you create a challenging and positive environment where people don't want to leave. And if you do that, then you will keep the people that you invested in, and there will be the loyalty that is hard to see nowadays. But you need to do the assessment first. You can make significant improvements in 6 months to a year. But to do so, you have to figure out where you're at, and you need to figure out the most glaring problems, and you need to jump on those first, because you're not going to fix everything in a year. It's going to take multiple years, but you can make significant bottom line progress and significant profit to your bottom line within a year.
Awesome. I think that was the last question. In fact, we are quite late here. It's well past dinner time. Let's see if there are any more questions. There is one here. How can one know to set bar for employees as one is different from another? Please help us. How can companies decide that individual bar, like shown in the whale example?
Okay, if first you start at the top down with the strategies, and they have to set the goals for the executive team, and then the executive team sets it for the senior managers, and then the senior managers set it for the junior managers, and then the supervisors, and then the hourly employees. But you in your department, once you know what your department needs to achieve, or what you as a leader would like to achieve in that department, then you set that goal, and then you analyze the measurements that you currently have and the ones that you don't have that you need to implement that can determine whether or not you've achieved that result. And once you know what metrics can measure, if you know if we hit these measurements, we have achieved our goal, then those measurements can be broken down into the individuals on the team in that particular department, and then they can take the goals that are given to them and break them down further to the next level below them to make sure that everybody knows what they need to achieve within their span of control that will help the organization meet its ultimate goals for the year, for the 5 year, depending on what the planning and strategic process dictates.
Excellent. It was wonderful, Randy. I I shouldn't say Apollo. I think there was a bit of a bad luck in terms of that we spend time in trying to set the system, but it was wonderful. I think, as the saying goes, all is well that ends well. Thank you really for this, and I hope that the audience, whatever was left, was able to get a lot of things. I took up a couple of points, which I will try and put some cue into our own company. And thank you once again. And I look forward to interact with you after the event is over, to get some further inputs and how we can collaborate together for this side of the world. Thank you once again, and have a great day ahead.
Thank you very much. It was exciting to be able to be a part of a great event like Pack Impressions, and I hope that it provided significant value to the people that that stuck around and watched the presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a great day ahead. कोई है ऑडियंस है कोई?
This is the last session, no? So you have to give a closing remark. I thought you would give that and then leave the video.
Is there anyone in the audience?
Let me check.
Okay, so
yeah, there are people from the print industry and all are there.
Okay. Are we live? Okay, so that brings an end to, I would say, a very, very exhaustive session. It started off with, a strategy session, and then we started moving around into design and operations, sales, and then now this last session, which was on Agile. My 2 cents into this whole thing, I think there were a lot of points which were discussed, which is all about creating efficiency in our system, creating innovation, and I believe that whoever attended all these sessions, which is, I'm not sure if everyone has attended each and every session, but as a part of the panels and as a part of comparing this, there was a lot of things that were learned. One good thing about being digital is that every session is available. It's going to be I'm not too sure whether it's going to be from tonight or from definitely sometime starting tomorrow. Each and every session is going to be available on the packimpression.dreamcast.in website. Every registered member will get this opportunity to come back and watch each and every session at their own leisure. Download. Some of these sessions were very, very interesting. There are a lot of inputs that came from experts on guidelines, on tips as to how you could shape your business during these uncertain times. And I would welcome that you take this time out, view at your own leisure, or you would download into your digital briefcase so that you could actually watch it as leisure. It was a pleasure having you, right throughout these 2 days. Tomorrow we continue with our expos and the breakaway sessions. There are some interesting topics being arranged for the breakaway session, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning at 10:30. Have a great day, a good evening, and see you tomorrow. Thank you.